You'll never be the kind of man women brag about in group chats. She smirked during dinner while her friends sat listening across the table. I quietly paid for everyone's meals and left. Nearly a year later, one of those same friends sent me screenshots of her crying about losing me. You'll never be the kind of man women brag about in group chats. She said it the way people say things they've been saving. Casual. Deliberate. Like she'd rehearsed the delivery a dozen times in her bathroom mirror and finally found the right audience for it. The table went quiet for exactly 1 second before everyone laughed. Not nervous laughter. Not the kind that asked, did she really just say that? The kind that already knew. The kind that had been waiting. I set down my fork. There were 6 of us at the table. Me, Ashley, and 4 of her friends, Mara, Devin, Justine, and a girl named Kira I'd met maybe twice before. The restaurant was the kind of place with candles and short glass holders and a wine list that goes on for 3 pages. I'd chosen it. I'd made the reservation. I looked at Ashley. She was still smiling. Not at me. At Mara, who was covering her mouth with her hand the way people do when they're laughing and want credit for trying not to. I picked my fork back up. I finished my dinner. I flagged down the waiter, asked for the check, and paid for all 6 of us without saying a word about it. Then I put on my jacket, told everyone it was nice seeing them, and left. I walked to my car, sat in the driver's seat for a moment, turned on the heat because it was November and the steering wheel was cold. I didn't feel angry. I want to be clear about that, because people always assume rage is what comes next. What I felt was something quieter than that, closer to recognition, like something I'd been circling for months had finally shown its face. What happened in the months after that dinner ended up costing Ashley more than she ever expected to lose. What you need to understand is that I didn't walk out of that restaurant because I was dramatic. I walked out because there was nothing left to say. That's the part that's hard to explain to people who haven't been in that specific kind of relationship. The kind where the disrespect is never loud enough to justify leaving, but always present enough to make you feel vaguely small. It lives in the tone of a sentence, not the words themselves. It lives in who laughs and how fast. Ashley and I had been together for almost 2 years at that point. We'd met through mutual friends, the way most people meet people in their late 20s when they've run out of patience for apps. She was funny, smart in a competitive way that I'd initially found interesting. She had an opinion about everything, which I'd mistaken for depth. Her friends had always been her primary audience. I understood that early. What I didn't understand, or maybe refused to, was that I had become part of her material. The dinner was a Thursday in November. We were celebrating Mara's new job, which is the kind of thing Ashley organized and executed with precision, because social orchestration was her love language. She'd chosen the restaurant. She'd coordinated the time. She'd sent 3 reminder texts to people she was afraid would cancel. And then, somewhere between the second bottle of wine and the entrees, she'd decided the evening needed a punchline. I was the punchline. What I didn't realize, sitting in my car that night with the heat running and the radio off, was that one of the women at that table had gone very still when Ashley said it. I didn't notice at the time. I would later. If you enjoy real stories like this, subscribe, because what happened next changed everything for me. I was 31. Ashley was 29. We lived separately. She had an apartment across town she shared with Mara. I had a 1-bedroom I'd been slowly furnishing for 3 years, the way single people in their 30s furnish apartments, like they're in no hurry to declare anything permanent. My job was in project management at a mid-sized logistics firm. Not glamorous. Stable, well-compensated, the kind of work that looks boring from the outside and is actually fairly demanding once you're inside it. I'd been promoted twice in 4 years. My manager trusted me with clients he didn't trust anyone else with. Ashley worked in marketing, which she was genuinely good at. She understood how to make things look desirable. She understood framing and positioning and the careful architecture of a first impression. She was less interested in what happened after the first impression. Our friend group overlapped in a few places, but mostly ran parallel. I had my own people, my college roommate Marcus, a few guys from work, my cousin Daniel who lived nearby. Ashley's world was mostly the dinner table for Mara, Devin, Justine, Kira. I'd always felt tolerated by that group rather than welcomed. I told myself that was normal. That not everyone's boyfriend needs to be best friends with the friend group. That I was projecting. I was not projecting. The dinner had started fine. That's the thing about these evenings. They always start fine. We got there first, Ashley and I, and she immediately rearranged the table settings so she'd be sitting next to Mara. I moved my chair without mentioning it. Devin and Justine arrived together. Devin already mid-story about something that had happened at her office, and the table fell into the easy, overlapping rhythm that friend groups have when they know each other well enough to talk over each other comfortably. I ordered a sparkling water. Ashley glanced at it, but didn't say anything. The conversation moved the way it usually did when I was at these dinners, around me rather than through me. Not aggressively, just naturally. I was adjacent to the group's frequency, always slightly off the wavelength. I'd learned to be a good listener at these things, to ask questions, to laugh at the right moments. Mara talked about her new job for a while. It was a good story, genuinely. She'd been trying to get into this particular company for over a year and had finally landed it, and she was animated and happy, and it was nice to see. Then Devin said something about a guy she was seeing, someone from a dating app, a finance type. She was describing how he'd shown up to their first date in a Porsche, and she'd immediately texted Mara a photo from the bathroom. That's what I mean, Devin said. That's the energy. Like, you just know within the first 10 minutes. You know within 10 seconds, Mara said. The Porsche was 10 seconds, Devin said, and they both laughed. Ashley glanced at me. I smiled. I was having the salmon. It was good. Kevin would never do something like that, Ashley said. She said it lightly, conversationally. The way you say something you intend to sound affectionate, but have calibrated to land just slightly differently. Kevin is very practical, she added. Justine nodded in that neutral way people nod when they're staying out of it. Practical is good, Marcus would have said. None of these women said that. The table moved on. I refilled my water. Then, maybe 20 minutes later, after the entrees arrived and the second bottle of wine was opened, Devin circled back to the group chat topic. She was talking about some guy a friend of hers was dating, and how the friend had been posting about him in their group chat constantly, and how it was this whole thing. That's the real test, Mara said. Is he group chat material? Ashley laughed. She turned to look at me, and there was something in her expression I'd seen before, but never quite named. Not cruelty exactly, more like the specific pleasure of an audience. You'll never be the kind of man women brag about in group chats, she said. Pause. Laughter. I looked at her. She was still looking at Mara, still smiling. Kira, at the far end of the table, had stopped laughing. I noticed that. Just registered it, and set it aside. I picked up my fork. I finished my salmon. I ordered a dessert I didn't really want, ate half of it, and asked for the check. Kira had gone quiet in a specific way. Not bored quiet. Not drunk quiet. Uncomfortable quiet. She looked down at her plate when the laughter peaked. She reached for her water glass with slightly too much focus. The way people reach for something when they need something to do with their hands. I logged it. I left. She texted me while I was still in the parking garage. You okay? You left so fast, lol. I drove home. She called when I was on the highway. I let it ring. She called again 10 minutes later. I answered because not answering felt like its own kind of statement, and I wasn't ready to make statements. Hey, she said. She had that voice she used when she wasn't sure which version of me she was dealing with. Slightly elevated. Slightly careful. Hey, you just disappeared. Everyone noticed. I said goodbye to everyone. You know what I mean. You were weird. I merged onto the exit ramp. I was fine. Kevin. And now the voice shifted, warmer, tilted toward intimacy. It was a joke. You know that, right? We were all just being dumb. Sure. You're doing the thing where you go silent, and then I don't know what you're thinking. I'm driving. She exhaled. I didn't mean anything by it. You know how I get when I've had wine. I just say things. I know. Are you mad? No. You sound mad. I'm tired. There was a pause. Then, softer. I'll come over. I'm going to sleep. Kevin. Good night, Ashley. I hung up. She texted twice more before I turned off my phone. The second message ended with "You're being so sensitive about nothing," and I lay in the dark reading it and understood, with the specific clarity that only comes at night, that this was not the first time she'd said something like that. At some table, in some room, with some configuration of her friends. This was just the first time I'd heard it. The next morning, she came by with coffee and an apology that was technically an apology and actually an explanation of why the apology wasn't necessary. I think I just get a little performative when I'm with them, she said, sitting on my kitchen counter while I made eggs. Like, I play to the room. You know that about me. I know. And they can be a lot. Devin especially. It's like a competition sometimes, and she stopped. I'm sorry. Genuinely. It came out wrong. I handed her a mug. Okay, I hear you. She searched my face for something. I kept it neutral. Looking back, I should have ended it that morning. Not dramatically, not with a speech. Just quietly, the way you close a tab you're done reading. Instead I said okay, and we had breakfast and she left, and I went to the gym and I told myself I was overreacting. That is the precise mechanism of this kind of erosion. You talk yourself out of your own perception. You call it sensitivity. You call it being a good partner. You call it maturity. What it actually is the slow accumulation of evidence you keep refusing to date and file. November became December. We went to a holiday party at Devon's apartment, and Ashley, halfway through the evening, referred to me in conversation as her project while talking to Devon's new boyfriend. She said it with a laugh, as though it were fond. The new boyfriend looked at me with an expression I recognized as sympathy. I got more drinks. In early December, we had dinner with just Justine and her boyfriend, Marcus. Not my Marcus, a different one, a guy who worked in real estate and owned 2 Blazers he rotated. This dinner was fine, actually. Justine was warmer one-on-one. Her boyfriend was normal. We talked about a show we'd all been watching and the conversation was easy. But driving home, Ashley said, "Justine thinks you're interesting when you actually talk." When I actually talk, I repeated. I just mean you went quiet at Devon's party and Justine mentioned it. Justine mentioned that I was quiet? She just said you seemed checked out. I wasn't checked out. I was listening. I'm just relaying what she said. I didn't respond. Don't take it the wrong way, Ashley said. I had started taking very few things anyway at all. That was the shift happening inside me. So gradual, I almost didn't notice it. I was becoming an observer of the relationship rather than a participant in it. Watching it the way you watch weather out a window, noting it, not moved by it. There was a work happy hour in mid-December where Ashley came by afterward, and I introduced her to my colleague Rachel, who I worked closely with on a major account. Rachel was sharp, direct, the kind of person who asks real questions and actually listens to the answers. The 3 of us talked for 20 minutes. Ashley was quiet in a way she wasn't usually quiet. Not uncomfortable quiet, something more like recalibrating quiet. In the Uber home she said, "Your coworker seems intense." Rachel? She's great. She's really good at what she does. She was very focused on you. We work on the same account. I'm just saying. Saying what? Nothing. Forget it. But she'd said something, and we both knew it, and neither of us addressed it. Which is how everything got carried forward in that relationship. Not resolved, just relocated. Moved to a different room and closed. There was something I still hadn't connected. A thread I kept almost picking up and then setting down. Kira texted me in mid-December. Not Ashley's phone. Mine. She'd gotten my number from somewhere. I didn't ask how. The text was short, almost formal. "Hey, this is Kira. We met at Mara's dinner. I just wanted to check in. Hope you're doing okay." I stared at it for a while. Then I thanked her and said I was fine. She replied, "Good. That's good. And then, I'm around if you ever want to grab coffee or talk." No agenda. I didn't show the text to Ashley. I told myself there was nothing to show. I didn't have coffee with Kira until January. By then, something had shifted enough that I agreed without thinking about it too hard. We met at a place near her office on a Tuesday afternoon, and she was different in this context than she'd been at the dinner, quieter, more direct, without the social performance that table required. She ordered a black coffee and asked me how I was really doing. Honestly, I said, "That's why I asked." I thought about it. I feel like I've been watching a film I'm also in, and the character who's supposed to be me keeps making choices I wouldn't make. She nodded slowly. "That's a specific way to feel." "Yeah." She wrapped her hands around her mug. "I want to be upfront about something. I don't know exactly why I texted you, but I've been thinking about that dinner since it happened, and I felt like I owed you something, even if I can't articulate exactly what. You don't owe me anything. That's not why people do things out of obligation." She paused. "I've been friends with Ashley for a while. Not as long as Devon or Mara. Long enough." She said it with the weight of someone who is choosing their words carefully because the words they're choosing are true. "She talks about you," Kira said. "In the group chat. A lot." I kept my expression level. Not the way Devon talks about guys she likes. More like, she stopped. "I don't know how to say this without it sounding worse than I want it to." "Say it like it is." She looked at me. Like you're something she keeps around because she's not ready to admit she's uncertain about what she actually wants. And because you're reliable. And because, she stopped again. Then, quietly. Because it makes her feel like she's the one with options. The coffee shop was busy. Someone behind me was ordering in a loud, cheerful voice. "She talks about your job?" I said. "She makes fun of it. Not viciously. In the way people make fun of things they've decided aren't impressive. so they don't have to feel bad about not appreciating them. My job is fine. I know. That's the thing. She makes it sound like a compromise she made. I let that sit. There's more, Kira said. But I don't know if I should. Tell me. She pulled out her phone, opened a screen, and turned it toward me. I screenshot this a couple weeks ago because I didn't know what to do with it. It was a message from Ashley in a group chat. I could see the names at the top, the 4 of them plus Kira plus someone I didn't recognize. The message read, "Honestly, if someone better came along, I don't think I'd hesitate. Kevin's just comfortable. You know?" Mara had replied with a heart emoji. Devin had written, "Babe, that's not a relationship, that's a backup plan, LOL." And Ashley had replied, I know. I'll figure it out." I read it twice. Handed the phone back. "I'm sorry," Kira said. "Don't be. I'd rather know." I paid for the coffees. We sat for another 20 minutes and talked about other things, her job, a trip she was planning, something neutral and unloaded. And when we left, she hugged me briefly at the door and said, "You deserve better than to be someone's comfortable." I walked to my car. I sat in it for a moment. The decision was already made. I just hadn't scheduled it yet. I went home and drafted a breakup text in my notes app. Read it twice. Deleted it. I told myself I needed more time. That I needed to be sure. But I already was. I just wasn't ready to close the door on 2 years in a parking garage with my phone in my hand. That was the only thing still outstanding. Not the decision, but the proper execution of it. I gave myself a little more time, which is when the wheels came off entirely. January was cold, and long the way January always is. Ashley and I kept operating on the same track even as the ground had shifted underneath it. She didn't know yet, or she sensed something and was choosing not to investigate. I've seen both behaviors up close, and sometimes they look identical. The arguments became more frequent. Not louder, actually quieter. That was the tell. When couples start arguing in a flatter register, with less heat, it means someone has stopped investing in the outcome. I had stopped investing in the outcome. She wanted to talk about the future, an apartment, possibly some migration toward a shared life, and I kept finding reasons to defer. Not yet. Things are busy at work. Let's revisit in the spring. And she'd look at me with an expression I recognized as frustration, and I'd feel something I recognized as nothing. That nothing scared me briefly. Then it didn't. She started being less careful about small things. Canceled plans twice in 1 week with explanations that were technically adequate but felt assembled. Checked her phone during dinners in a way she hadn't before. Was distracted in a specific directional way. I didn't confront her about it. What would have been the point? I wasn't heartbroken. I wasn't jealous. I was a man marking time until the right moment to leave, which is an uncomfortable thing to admit, but the honest one. At a birthday party in late January, Mara's boyfriend's birthday, a gathering at a bar in the West Village, I watched Ashley across the room talking to someone I didn't know. She was laughing in the way she laughed when she wanted someone to notice her laughing. Her posture had changed. Her hands were moving more than usual. Devin appeared next to me with a drink. "Having fun?" she said, and I couldn't tell if she was being polite or something else. "It's a good turnout," I said. She followed my eyeline to Ashley. Didn't say anything. Then, "She's a lot sometimes." "Yeah." Devin looked at me. There was something in her face I hadn't seen from her before, something that might have been guilt, dressed up as casual conversation. "For what it's worth," she said, "she does care about you. In her way." In her way. I nodded. Finished my drink. Moved to talk to someone else. She still didn't know the decision had already been made. The birthday party was also where I overheard the phone call. I was on the roof, getting some air, and Ashley came up through the same door maybe 10 minutes later, not seeing me, already mid-conversation on her phone. She was standing near the stairwell door. I was near the railing. I didn't move. I heard, "No, I know. I know. It's just, I don't know what I want yet. Can you give me a little more time?" Pause. Because it's not that simple. There are things I'd have to figure out. Another pause. "I miss you too." She hung up. Then she went back downstairs. I stood at the railing and looked at the city for a while. The cold was useful. Clear. I went back to the party. I was pleasant for the rest of the evening. I laughed at the right moments. When Ashley found me an hour later and slipped her hand into mine, I let her. I drove us home. I was quiet. She asked if I was tired. I said yes. The following Saturday, I went to her apartment. She'd made coffee. She was in a good mood, or performing a good mood. By then I couldn't always tell the difference. She was wearing the gray sweater she wore on weekend mornings, and her hair was pulled back, and she looked comfortable in a way that used to make me feel something. I sat down at her kitchen table. She poured a mug and set it in front of me and started talking about a restaurant she wanted to try, some new place in Nolita that Mara had been to, and she was describing the pasta situation, and I waited for a pause in the sentence. "I need to tell you something," I said. She stopped. "Set the coffee pot down. I want to end this," I said. "I've been thinking about it for a while, and I want to be honest with you. I'm not angry. I'm not doing this to hurt you, but I'm done." She stared at me. "What?" "I think we've been running on the wrong kind of energy for a long time. And I think we both know that. Kevin, I don't want to have a big conversation about it. I don't think that helps either of us." She sat down. Her hands were flat on the table. "Is this about the dinner? Because if this is still about what I said, it's not about the dinner. Then what? It's about a pattern. One that I should have addressed earlier and didn't. That's on me too." Her eyes went bright in the way that precedes either anger or tears. You don't get to come here and say 4 sentences and call that a breakup. "I know you're upset," I said. "That's okay. I'd rather you be honest about how you feel than try to talk me out of it." She tried anyway. For about 20 minutes, she tried. And I sat there, calm, holding my coffee, and listened without retracting a word. When she ran out of things to say, I stood up, put on my jacket, and said, "Take care of yourself, Ashley. I mean that." I walked out. At the elevator, I heard her say something. One word, or maybe just a sound. I couldn't tell which. I pressed the button and waited. February. I moved a couch. I'd been meaning to for months. Rearranged the whole living room, actually, and it looked better, more like a place a person lived rather than a place a person camped. I bought a decent plant. I learned it was called a pothose. I did not kill it. Work picked up in a way I was grateful for. The account I'd been managing with Rachel went through a major expansion, and I was tasked with leading the new rollout. More responsibility, more visibility, a compensation adjustment that felt proportional for once. I stayed late when it mattered and left on time when it didn't. I started going to the gym with consistency for the first time in years. Not obsessively, not with any particular transformation goal, just regularly. In the way that gradually changes how you feel about your own body, which changes how you carry yourself, which changes things you don't expect. Marcus came to stay for a long weekend in March. We ate a lot of good food and watched a season of something we'd been meaning to get to and played cards until too late on 2 consecutive nights. When he left, he said, "You seem like yourself again," and I realized that was what it was. I took a trip to Portugal in April, solo, which I'd never done before. I ate at small restaurants where I didn't speak the language and sat at outdoor tables with my notebook and watched how people moved through the world in places that had nothing to do with me. It was valuable in a way that's hard to quantify. I didn't think about Ashley every day. Then I stopped thinking about her most days. Then she became the kind of thing I thought about only when something adjacent triggered it. A restaurant, a song, the specific light in November at dusk. I was 32. I had a good apartment and a better job and a pothose that was growing up the window frame. I was, with some reliable frequency, happy. I was not bragged about in group chats. I found I was okay with that. The message came on a Thursday in late May. Kira. We'd texted occasionally since the coffee in January. Nothing heavy, mostly just the ambient contact of 2 people who'd established some mutual regard. She'd sent me a link to an article once. I'd replied. The conversation had a low hum to it that felt easy. This message was different. I could tell from the length of it, which I could see in preview before I opened it. "Hey, so I've been going back and forth about whether to send you this. I'm going to send it because I think on some level you should know, and because I think you're someone who can read it and just be okay. But if you'd rather not see it, just say the word and I'll drop it." I replied, "Send it." She did. The screenshots came in 3 separate images, stitched together from a longer conversation. The group chat, the same one. I made a coffee before I opened them. The first screenshot was from early March. The group chat thread, 5 participants. A conversation that had started, as best I could tell, with Devin posting a photo of a couple she'd seen at brunch. They looked happy in the way people photographed at brunch are made to look happy. Ashley had replied, "Must be nice." Devin, "When are you getting back out there?" Ashley, "I don't know. It's weird. I thought I'd feel more relieved." Mara, "How do you actually feel?" Ashley, "Like I made a mistake." Which is insane, BC, I was so sure. Then Mara, "Do you miss him or do you miss the comfort?" And Ashley, after a gap that I could tell had taken her a while, "Both." Which is worse, honestly, because it means I didn't appreciate what the comfort actually was. I read that one twice. Set my phone down. Picked it up. The second screenshot was from April. Ashley had posted a photo. I recognized the location. It was a restaurant she and I had been to once for her friend Justine's birthday. She'd gone back, apparently, with the group. The message below it. We came here and I just kept thinking about the last time I was here. With Kevin. And how he'd asked the waiter about the sourcing of the fish because he was genuinely curious and I was so embarrassed in the moment, and now it's like the thing I think about most. Devin, the fish thing. Ashley, I know it sounds stupid. Mara, it doesn't sound stupid, it sounds like you miss someone who actually cared about things. Ashley, he cared about everything. That was the thing. And I turned it into a joke. Justine, who I'd never heard much from in these contexts, had responded, you did kind of do a number on that man. The dinner. Ashley, I know. Don't remind me. Justine, I'm just saying. I watched his face, and it was like watching someone make a decision. Ashley, I've thought about that night every single week since it happened. I sat with that for a moment. Every single week. The third screenshot was the one Kira had hesitated over most, I think. I could tell because it was more recent, 2 weeks earlier, early May. And it was longer. Ashley, I looked at his LinkedIn today. Did you know he got promoted? Like actually promoted, with a title change and everything. Devin, of course he did. Ashley, why does that feel like a punishment? Mara, BC, you're realizing you were the problem. Ashley, I was the problem. Then, after a few messages I couldn't see because the screenshot was cropped. Ashley, sometimes I want to text him. Just to say I know what I did, and I'm sorry. Not to get him back, just to say it. Justine, then say it. Ashley, he wouldn't respond. And he'd be right not to. Then Devin, bestie, you're spiraling. Ashley, I know I'm spiraling. I've been spiraling for 4 months. I just miss him and I hate that I miss him and I hate that I didn't know what I had until I watched him walk out of a restaurant and not look back once. I closed the screenshots, set my phone face down on the counter, made another cup of coffee I didn't need. I texted Kira, thank you for sending these. She replied, are you okay? I thought about it. Yeah, actually yeah. She sent back a single, good. And then, I don't know why I stayed in that group chat as long as I did. I left it last month. I smiled at that, alone in my kitchen on a Thursday morning. For what it's worth, I wrote, that coffee meant a lot. Me too, she said. Here is what I understood, reading those screenshots, that I hadn't let myself fully understand before. The dinner wasn't a fluke. It wasn't Ashley having too much wine and playing to a room and being careless with someone she loved. It was the visible surface of something that had been running underneath the whole relationship. A fundamental mismatch between how she'd framed me to herself and what I actually was. I had made a category error. I'd assumed that comfort and stability were understood as valuable. That a man who showed up, who paid attention, who asked waiters about fish sourcing because he was genuinely curious about things, who paid for 6 dinners without keeping score. I'd assumed that was legible as something good. And to Ashley, it had been legible as something safe, which she had then associated with something lesser. She needed me to be impressive in the currency her particular group traded in. Visible, external, loud about what he had. She'd wanted someone her friends would screenshot and send each other. Not because she was shallow. Exactly. She was more complicated than that. But because she hadn't yet figured out that the things that photograph well and the things that last are rarely the same inventory. The red flags I'd been collecting and not filing had all pointed here. The way she'd talked about my job, not unkindly, but with a particular flatness, like it was a placeholder. The way she'd positioned me at those dinners, there but not present, a fact about her life rather than the center of it. The phone call on the rooftop. The group chat message in January that Kira had shown me. Kevin's just comfortable. She tried in her way, and I tried in mine. But she'd never actually looked at me without filtering what she saw through what she'd decided she needed. And I'd spent 2 years being someone else's idea of a compromise and calling it a relationship. That's the thing they don't tell you. Sometimes the problem isn't that someone hurt you. Sometimes the problem is that they never quite saw you. And sometimes you accept that. For a long time. Because the alternative requires admitting you've been wrong about what you were getting. She texted in June. I'd half expected it. Not with any particular countdown, but with the sense that some things follow their own logic at their own pace. The text was short. Shorter than I'd imagined, actually. Hey, I know it's been a while, and I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. Not for how things ended, but for some of the ways I behaved while they were happening. You didn't deserve to be made small, and I did that sometimes, and I'm sorry. You don't need to respond to this. I read it in the evening, on my couch, the pot hose visible over the arm of the sofa, the window open because it was finally warm enough. I read it once. Then again. I thought about the dinner. About her face as she said it, lit up by candles and an audience. About the table of women, some of whom had laughed and one of whom had gone still. I thought about the rooftop, the cold, the railing. I miss you too. I thought about the screenshots, the fish sourcing, the spiral. I watched him walk out and he never looked back once. I thought about Portugal and the small restaurants and the notebooks and the plant I'd learned not to kill. I put my phone down, turned on the television. Let the evening pass the way evenings do when you are at peace with the life you're actually living. I didn't write back. Not because I was angry. Not because I wanted her to suffer. Not because I'd been waiting 20 months to finally have the leverage. I didn't write back because there was nothing left to say that would mean anything. And because some doors, when you close them properly, stay closed. Not as punishment, but because the room behind them is no longer one you live in. Kira and I had dinner in July. Not a date. Or maybe it was. I think we both held that ambiguity lightly on purpose. It was easy in the way that things are easy when two people have already seen each other clearly. She was funny in a dry, particular way. She had opinions she'd actually thought about. She asked me questions and then listened to the answers in a way that made me realize how infrequently that had happened in the years before. I don't know exactly where that goes. I'm not in a hurry to name it. Marcus came back for another long weekend in August. He met a woman at a bar on the second night, and we all had brunch together on Sunday, and she was great, and he texted me from the train home with 7 exclamation points. The promotion at work led to a new account, which led to a restructured team, which led to a conversation with my manager about what the next few years looked like. The answer was good. Devin, I heard through an entirely different channel, was in a new relationship with the finance guy from the Porsche. They seemed genuinely happy, from the outside, which is the only view anyone ever gets of anything. I didn't hear much about Mara or Justine. Life had rerouted in its quiet way. Ashley was in the city somewhere, going about her life. I wished her well in the way you can wish someone well when the wound has closed completely, not with warmth exactly, but without residue. The last screenshot Kira had sent me, the one I kept returning to, briefly, and then setting down, had ended with Ashley posting an old photo to the group chat. I recognized it. She'd taken it months before the dinner. We were at a farmer's market in Brooklyn, and she'd taken the photo without me noticing, and I was looking at something off-frame, some fruit, probably, or a person walking by, and I was smiling slightly, not for the camera, just for whatever I was looking at. Her caption in the chat was just 3 words. I miss him. I thought about that for a while, and then I stopped thinking about it. I closed the message and never opened it again.